meet our first contestant. The blindfolds are all in place, panel?
Yes, sir.
Yes, good. Will you come in and sign in, please? I would like to ask you, first of all, if you're familiar with our scoring system, are you?
I am.
Good. In that event, let's let everybody at home and those who are here with us in the theater, except my friends on the panel, know exactly what your line is. All right, panel, needless to say, you are blindfolded because there is an area of identification involving either appearance, dress, handwriting, location, all sorts of things that we normally use as sort of little helps and aids to you. We're not going to give you this trip, but we will let you have one bit of help. Our guest is salaried, and let's begin the general questioning with Bennett Cerf.
Does your job as a salaried job come from a non-profit-making organization?
Yes.
Is the non-profit-making organization something to do with government?
No.
1 down and 9 to go, Miss Francis.
Is the non-profit making organization anything to do with the church?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you an important member of any particular religion?
Not so much.
Well, now, I must now, I think, correct that answer and say that our guest is indeed an important member of one faith.
Well, I'm going to take your word for the truth, John.
Yes.
Have you written any books?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you a column in any newspaper?
Yes, ma'am.
Does one call you doctor?
If they want to be real respectful.
Well, that's what I want to be.
And they would want to be, Miss Barley.
Are you by any chance... oh, dear, there are two I'd like to ask about.
Go ahead.
Are you Dr. Norman Vincent Peale?
Yes.
Are you?
I must say, congratulations, Arlene. That was magnificently done. Bennett, you unlocked the door, of course, with that question about...
Being the mayor of Dublin tonight.
Yeah.
I tried to talk with the brogue, but I gave it up.
And, of course, actually, I suppose the question about the books was a critical one, too, because we all know that Dr. Peale has written.
And you didn't publish it, Bennett.
No, this is a remarkable thing about Dr. Peale's book. If memory serves me right, I've read recently you have another book.
That is right,
coming
John.
out very soon.
That is right.
Stay Alive All Your Life, isn't it?
Stay alive all your life, yes, sir.
It's about to be published, isn't
Yes,
it?
tomorrow, as a matter of fact.
Tomorrow's publication day. Well, wonderful, sir. Well, I, with a great many others, have had great benefit from your earlier books and look forward to this new one. Yes,
Well, that's a
Dorothy.
real compliment.
I was just going to say that the last time I saw Dr. Peale, we were on a heavenly mountaintop in Switzerland, and he looks as though he's been there all the time.
We had a good time, didn't we?
Wonderful.
Dr. Peale, you should give your publisher a little publicity. Who is the publisher of your new book?
Now, that I call real generous. Prentice Hall Incorporated.
There we are. And Bennett has done his good deed for the next
That's
300
really
years.
a Christian spirit.
He really turned the other cheek, didn't he?
He surely did.
Well, Dr. Peale, thank you very much for being our guest. I'm sorry we didn't give them more trouble. We'd hoped you'd be out here with me much longer
Well,
than that.
I wish I had been.
Nice to have had you with us,
Thank you,
Doctor.
John.
Thank you.
Dr. Peale's question and answer department appears in each issue of Look magazine.
There is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it.
science of spiritual reality with me, Mitchell K. Jones.
There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. 1 John 4:1.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I want to start by, as always, thanking my family, my wife, Melania, my kids. They're not kids anymore, but they're kids as far as I'm concerned. They'll always be my kids. And I want
positive thinking works wonders.
To understand President Trump, you need to know all about Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. The pastor is well known for his massive best-selling book, The Power of Positive Thinking. His messages from the pulpit reflected the same theme.
He can make you think differently, no longer negatively defeated, but positive, hopeful, optimistic, victorious.
For 50 years, Peale was pastor of Marble Collegiate Church in New York. For many years, Trump's parents sat in the pews listening, and so did a young Donald. The message of positivity began to take hold.
One reason that the positive thinker gets positive results is he is not afraid of a problem. As a matter of fact, he finds problems exciting. He likes to take a tough, knotty problem and rip it apart and put it together again in the right manner.
With a father who preached much the same philosophy, Trump became sold on it. His father, Fred, actually became good friends with Peale, and the pastor married Trump and his first wife, Ivana. Decades later, Trump told Psychology Today magazine, quote, "I'm a cautious optimist, but also a firm believer in the power of being positive. I think that helped. I refuse to be sucked into negative thinking on any level, even when the indications weren't great. That was a good lesson because I emerged on a very victorious level. It's a good way to go." And when we interviewed the future president during his run for the presidency, Peale's impact on his life was top of mind.
You know, the greatest speaker I think I've ever witnessed was Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And he would speak, The Power of Positive Thinking. He would speak so much, and he'd bring it into modern day life. He'd talk about success stories and people that were successful and became alcoholics, and then they conquered it. And I grew up watching that. He wasn't reading and I've had plenty of pastors and ministers that read. It's not the same thing. Norman Vincent Peale would get up and his arms would be flailing. And you hated to leave church because you wanted him to go on further.
I get up this morning, I turn on one of the networks, and they show an empty field. I said, wait a minute. I made a speech. I looked out. The field it looked like 1.5 million people. They showed a field where there were practically nobody standing there. And they said, Donald Trump did not draw well. I said, it was almost raining. The rain should have scared him away, but God looked down and he said, we're not going to let it rain on your speech. In fact, when I first started, I said, oh no. First line, I got hit by a couple of drops. And I said, oh, this is too bad, but we'll go right through it. But the truth is that it stopped immediately. It was amazing. And then it became really sunny. Then I walked off and it poured right after I left. It poured. But, you know, we have something that's amazing because it looked like 1.5 million people, whatever it was. But it went all the way back to the Washington Monument. And I turn on, and by mistake, I get this network. And it showed an empty field. And it said we drew 250,000 people. Now, that's not bad, but it's a lie. We had 250,000 people literally around, in the little bowl that we constructed. That was 250,000 people. The rest of the, 20-block area all the way back to the Washington Monument was packed. So we caught them, and we caught them in a beauty, and I think they're going to...
You had talked a couple weeks ago, you were doing an interview, and you talked about how you hope to end the war in Ukraine because it might help you get into heaven. How does this help? Does this help?
I mean, I'm being a little cute. I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven. Okay, I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. I may be in heaven right now as we fly in Air Force One. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make heaven.
but I've made life a lot better for a lot of people. And, you know, as an example, had the election of 2020 not been rigged, you would have millions of people living just in Russia, Ukraine alone. That would have never happened. And it didn't happen for 4 years.
Oh, hi. Welcome back to the Science of Spiritual Reality. I am going to talk about something today. Well, I want to talk about some of our political situation today and what's sort of been happening. Maybe not. Maybe our historical situation today, where we are, who's the leader of our country, and historicize him a bit. I had somebody ask me at church the other day about seeing people on Facebook that were trashing Trump and name-calling. And I mean, I'm kind of with Zizek in terms of not really seeing these people as individuals so much as political ideological projects. I do think that's a little bit of the issue here, is that people identify with politicians and with leaders, with cultural leaders, celebrities, media figures and things like that. They have what's called a parasocial relationship with them, or they develop a parasocial relationship with them, where they identify with these individuals. An thing that Zizek says, he talks about, you know, how people like to kind of humanize Hitler, talk about how he was an artist and he was a vegetarian and all these sort of things, talk about, you know, that his girlfriend was Ava Braun and, you know, he didn't want to marry her, but then eventually he did, or whatever was the situation there. I don't even know. But Zizek says, I kind of advocate not seeing these figures as people, but instead seeing them as ideological projects. And I would agree with that. I think, you know, beyond, and I mean, part of what I am doing with this episode is humanizing Donald Trump, almost, though inadvertently, because what I'm really doing is historicizing him and his rise. But this individual at church asked me about, you know, she sees a lot of people name calling and things. And I am, you know, again, I don't see politicians so much as human beings, but as political projects. And in Romans, I always think about this verse in Romans, I think it's Romans 12, where it says, our fight is not against flesh and blood, but is against the rulers of this system and against those doing wicked in the spiritual realm. Wicked in the spiritual realm is a view that other human beings are less than human, is an ill-intentioned action. Evil, simply defined, is ill-intentioned action. It exists. We cannot deny it, as much as, you know, many people that I respect, like H. Emily Cady and others, have said evil doesn't exist. In A Course in Miracles says, you know, all this material stuff is illusion. I think I've talked a bit about how I am against that view. I'm with Michael Topper, who says, you know, this idea that you create your own reality is on the surface kind of silly, to be honest. I mean, even Ed Rabel, you know, or was it Ed Rabel or even many unity teachers have said, look, this idea that you create your own reality, that doesn't do much good to people living in a war zone, to people experiencing a Holocaust, to people being murdered and oppressed, to those who are imprisoned. This idea that you create your own reality, you're going to say that those people brought that reality onto themselves? No, I don't think so. And that is not Christian. That's not the Christian way. Jesus did not, he wasn't, as many New Thought teachers want to make it out to be, Neville Goddard and others, that Jesus was an individualist who, all of his lessons, Emmett Fox, I love Emmett Fox. I love a lot of what he has to say, but, again, he too, that all of Jesus's messages in the Sermon on the Mount and elsewhere were psychological messages to the individual. I don't agree with that. I'll talk in the future a little bit more about that. I see lowercase r, relative reality, as having a dialectical relationship with capital M, mind, God, divinity. I've talked about that before. I'll talk about it more in the future, but I've been talking about individuals like Fred Rogers, Joe Pera, Saint Joseph, the stepfather of Jesus. I'm talking about them as archetypes of male masculinity and of masculine strength. And I want to bring up, strength doesn't have to be a masculine property. And we all contain within us multitudes. We contain both masculine and feminine, or what have been known in Hermetic magic and other traditions as masculine versus feminine. But here's what Charles Fillmore says about strength. This is the metaphysical meaning of strength from the Revealing Word. And it says, the energy of God. So strength is the energy of God. Freedom from weakness, stability of character, power to withstand temptation, capacity to accomplish. Strength is physical, mental, and spiritual. All strength originates in spirit. The thought and the word spiritually expressed being the manifestation. So, manifestation of strength is the thought and word manifest and expressed. What does that mean for us? How can we be truly spiritually strong? And we often talk about how, the Oracle of Delphi says, know thyself. And this is, of course, I just went on a polemic against individualism, but certainly knowing thyself is the basis and is, in fact, the foundation of spirituality, of metaphysics. But this is not individualism. This is a side point, but, as it says in the Constitution of the Harmonial Association of Andrew Jackson Davis, the goal is harmonization of the individual. So harmonization, alignment of your spiritual centers with the divine mind, the great universal divine mind. And also harmonization of society with the individual passions. Okay, so that's an essential part. But I was thinking about, what does strength really mean? And I realized something. We think strength means doing things we don't want to do. But what if strength really means doing exactly what we want to do? I think many times when we are weak, is when we give in to what others expect or what the world expects of us. And this is weakness. And so to truly be strong, it doesn't mean to, as an ascetic might do, or, as these, religious devotees might do, deny yourself pleasures of life, deny yourself things you want to do. True strength means doing exactly what you want to do. But how often do we do that? How often do we even know what it is we actually want? See, that's the part where it gets complicated. But again, as Max Stirner and others have pointed out, the individual interest is inextricably linked to the collective interest. So what we want is never what we want. We don't know what we want, really. So that's the discovery. That's the know thyself part. Look within. And I think we know how this applies to society, how it applies to politics, to geopolitics, to other avenues of our world. We know. We know deep down what we need to do. We're just too afraid to do it. We're too anxious. But again, this is not... See, one of my things about activism today is that what it is doing something in order to do something. It's an impotent action. It's an action for the sake of action, for the sake of doing something. How can you just sit there? We have to do something. What do we do? I don't know. Something. So again, that's where we need to step back. We need to take a moment to think about how are our actions getting us what we want. And we need to think about what is it exactly that we do want. And so I'm going to look at a little bit of Donald Trump's history and look at what we're up against here. Because for one thing, a lot of the things that are going on right now are meant to cause chaos, meant to cause confusion, and meant to cause a visceral, violent reaction. That's the way a lot of our algorithms work, is that engagement boosts the post, whether it's negative or positive attention. This is something every ADHD diagnosed kid learns. Whether it's negative or positive, provoking a visceral reaction gets you attention. So one of the things we need to do is rise above that attention economy, rise above those algorithms that demand our attention, that demand our engagement, that demand we get upset, that demand we take on the affect of what is happening onto ourselves. Well, what does that do? It just makes us distressed. It doesn't make us more effective at fighting the injustice that's happening. So I hope you enjoy as we learn a little bit more about the spirituality and in some ways how New Thought is aligned with Donald Trump, but also how Trump's metaphysics are godless, Mammonite, scarcity-based metaphysics.
The following is the third in a series of lessons given by John Rankin entitled The Mysticism of Emma Curtis Hopkins. These lessons were given live at Unity Village Chapel.
In metaphysics, we boldly and continually proclaim that God is all and God is good, and therefore all is good. We proclaim it and unclaim it by turns. And so there is a need for us to become increasingly clear in our own minds about the question of the appearance of discord, disease, disaster, and death, all of which are lumped together in one metaphysical word, error. Sometimes we use the word illusion, and sometimes that word helps us understand, and sometimes it merely confuses the issue. An error, in the mathematical sense, is a misinterpretation of certain principles. That misinterpretation doesn't disturb the principle. The fact that we can place this computation, 2 plus 2 equals 5, right out where we can see it and give the appearance of an unsatisfying answer, produces no disturbance in the principle or universal concept of 2. 2 is not disturbed by our attaching a misinterpretation to it. It is not disturbed by the fact that we ascribe a wrong value to it. Now do you see where we're going? When in our individual experience we encounter, for example, someone whom we have leaned upon and drawn upon, they suddenly withdraw from our lives. We place a certain value, a certain judgment on their actions. If our premise is whatever disturbs my regular course of life is bad, then obviously this experience is bad, evil, error. It's distressing and discordant. But if our premise is that God is all and in all and through all and over all, our accurate evaluation of the situation would be summed up in the words, praise the Lord. And we might have to do what Emily Cady calls gritting our teeth and clenching our fists to get it out until we get a little more practice in that kind of interpretation.
You understand me? And I'm going to sue you if I have to. Do you understand me? Yes, I hung up. You didn't get disconnected. I hung up.
Performance could have been better.
Could have been better.
It could have been a hell of a lot better. But look, I'm not a guy who's going to run around blaming people. So I'm going to take responsibility for that. So if you want to fire me, go right ahead.
All right, Gene,
but I think
you're fired.
Hey, Michael, let me ask you a question.
He's knocking the hell out of Stephanie. He's telling me how bad Stephanie is, and you're interrupting him with nonsense over nothing Why don't you let him knock? He's not knocking you for a change. I mean, how stupid can you be?
But Mr. Trump,
Well, let me ask you this. He's knocking Stephanie, and you want him to stop knocking Stephanie. I'm starting to think that maybe you should be fired. What do you think about that?
Mr. Trump,
why wouldn't you let him go? Let me ask you this, Michael. He's killing her. He's going after her. She should be fired, according to him. And you're trying to stop him from talking.
Because, Mr. Trump, I was...
Hey, look, you claim to be like me. The difference is I work hard. You've been lazy. You've been nothing but trouble. And now you cut them off as they're fighting each other for who should be fired. Michael,
yes,
Michael.
Yes, sir.
You're fired.
People who have a partial grasp of the new thought still suppose that it is necessary that some should be poor in order that others may have enough, and believe that wealth is possible only to those who have superior ability, or the power to attract to themselves a larger portion from the limited supply. These people try to apply the new thought principles on the competitive plan, and they do so with a fair degree of success. They try to develop a superior attracting power, they inject new motives and new energy into competitive business methods. They assert, "I am success," all while believing that they can succeed only because 95% of all others fail. The majority of these competitive New Thought people do achieve a great measure of success because their faith gives them just the energy, push and optimism which are necessary in competitive business. The confidence born of their belief makes a majority of their actions successful. Their partial application of New Thought ideas makes them exceptionally able competitors, and they attribute their success to thought power and to affirmation when it is almost purely competitive. This so-called New Thought is really only the highest and most fully perfected form of the old thought. It only sees Caesar's kingdom after all, it has no conception of the kingdom of God. All the final results show that these New Thought people are only a part of Caesar's kingdom. Their fortunes fluctuate. They meet with losses and their business suffers from panics. Their prosperity is checkered by periods of adversity. Their sense of safety is mere self-confidence. Deep in the subconscious they always carry the germ of secret fear. No one can ever be wholly free from fear who recognizes any limitation in the supply, for if there is not enough to go round, we know that our turn to go without may come at any time. The lapses and failures of New Thought people are traceable directly to the idea of a limited supply, to the idea that success and the attainment of wealth are possible only to a part of us.
Trust God, have faith, stick it out. In the depths of the Great Depression, millions of Americans clung to these words from Norman Vincent Peale. They offered hope in a time of worry and instability, and Peale paired the belief in oneself with a sunnier future for all. He made religious belief a cornerstone of wealth and prosperity, and he urged Americans to find spiritual solutions to personal and national changes. From his pulpit in Midtown Manhattan, and amplified through a vast publishing empire and media platform, Norman Vincent Peale issued weekly reminders that personal well-being and piety were inseparable. Belief in oneself, he warned, was unlikely to endure without fervent belief in God. Americans were encouraged then to see themselves as living under God, while exhortations to go to church appeared on billboards, in magazines, and across radio and television airwaves. Peale tied the nation's prosperity and its growing affluence coming out of the Great Depression into the World War II era and the post-war Cold War era. He tied this growing affluence, this period of prosperity after World War II, to religiosity. And this connection still echoes in many arenas of American political and cultural life today. But Peale's influence was so great that decades later, his most notorious acolyte, Donald J. Trump would appeal to voters with the same combination of personal assurance, religious affirmation, and nationalist optimism. Make America great again. But Peale's impact extended beyond individual self-help and into the political realm as well, even back in the 1950s. He worked with conservative allies, including President Dwight Eisenhower and FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. His connection to Hoover is confirmed by a trove of papers and letters. And he imbued his messages of personal and national uplift with stronger nationalist significance than ever before, engaging in a Cold War against communism in favor of the free enterprise system, so-called. He became a co-founder of the American Foundation of Religion and Psychiatry, a nationwide evangelical organization. And Peale promoted the idea that individuals, politicians, and corporations could turn religiously inspired ideals into solutions to both public and private challenges. As Peale said, emotion breeds enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is that which is necessary to Christian world conquest. Peale actively engaged with the era's anti-communist fervor. He publicly endorsed Senator Joseph McCarthy's campaign to expose subversives in the federal government. Peale turned to broadcasting his message of positivity in his best-selling book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And for 2 years, it actually rivaled the Bible in sales. It opened with the exhortation, believe in yourself, have faith in your abilities. So Peale insisted that such confidence must be religious in character, encouraging readers to employ prayer power as a tool for both personal growth and the nation's spiritual mobilization. Peale was a central figure in the nationalist movement promoting freedom under God and urging Americans to see their elected leaders as implementing nothing less than a government under God. So again, part pep talk, part sermon, part sales pitch, the power of positive thinking repeatedly reinforced the inseparability of self-belief, religious faith, and national destiny. This is a philosophy that was largely inspired by New Thought thinkers, such as especially Ernest Holmes, who Peale acknowledged was an influence on his own thinking, and whose Science of Mind work he praised. Talked about Ernest Holmes a couple weeks ago. But again, in The Power of Positive Thinking, Peale invokes God 91 times, and 49 times he references the Bible. It was originally entitled The Power of Faith. So the book's retitling sort of reflects Peale's desire to broaden its appeal, but still evangelism remains central. Peale was a Presbyterian minister. Across his pages, he stressed that religious belief was a prerequisite for personal confidence and for the health of the nation. He had publicly chastised President Franklin D. Roosevelt for being indifferent to religion and warned that the man who shows no interest in Christianity and fails to support it is the real enemy of our social institutions. In Peale's vision, spiritual devotion, personal optimism, and national success were inseparably intertwined. And this was a model of American life that combines self-help, faith, and patriotic duty.
You write in your book, my bankers and I worked out a terrific deal that allows me to come out stronger than ever. I see the deal as a great victory, and eventually the rest of the world will too. Being on the verge of bankruptcy, being bailed out by the banks,
Well, you don't have to say on the
skating on thin ice and almost drowning, that's a businessman to be admired?
You say on the verge of bankruptcy, Barbara, and you talk on the verge, and you listen to what people are saying.
I talk to your bankers.
Well, that's fine. And what do they say? I mean, you know, depending on which banker you're talking to, what do they say?
The only way you even have a chance is by selling that property out there totally, the plaza.
Well, I don't know what the bankers have said. The plaza is a very valuable property. Everybody told me, oh, you paid too much, you paid too much. Now they're all saying, what a great deal he
brought
made.
up, you know, illusion and absolutism and you know, the thinking that there is only spirit, everything else is an illusion. I think that's an ongoing subject for unity, I think, because I see two strands in unity. The one that is more absolutist, that says that everything's an illusion, and then the other one that would say, no, there's a relative truth to expression, right? It's they nest in each other, a bit like Shiva and Shakti in the Hindu system of understanding. So ultimately, maybe there is only spirit, but while we're in this universe, I think there's a dance. There's a sort of a cosmic dance between the formless and the form, right?
Yeah, you know, and I think one of the I think those are really good points. Especially, I like the thing about the nesting of the one in the other. It's a nice image. I think that one of the things that emerged as people thought about the universe and as mind rather than matter is they thought, okay, so well, if the world is spiritual and every substance is spiritual, then you know, and that the absolute part is true, then all the rest of this stuff must be just some kind of illusion. And that's not really what idealist metaphysics, which, you know, unity is an example of idealist metaphysics. That's not really what the position is. The position is that what we've taken to be matter is actually when I say mental perceptions of ideas. So it's not that it's an illusion, it's that the reality of what we're perceiving is mind. It's a mental event rather than a material one, right? So we're not saying an idealist metaphysics doesn't necessarily say, oh, well, you know, the world that we think is material is an illusion. What it says is the illusion is in thinking that the world consists of some sort of stuff external to the mind.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So that's my sort of way of looking at things.
It is. It's subtly different, but very important. You know, it's summed up for me in one of my favorite quotes of all time, and that comes from the Lankavatara Sutra of Buddhism, and it says exactly what you just said. Nothing is as it seems, but neither is it otherwise. And
wow, that's great.
You could
exactly
trip out
what I'm saying, only more profoundly.
You could trip out on that statement, but exactly this is what you're saying, right? If you don't be fooled by appearances, but don't look for some alternative that's totally different from the way things are, right? Because then you're into duality. You know, you're looking for something different from what the illusion is, and I think this is the danger of absolutism. You know, it tries to escape from the world. And Gnosticism has that idea too, in some forms. You know, the idea of the universe being created by an evil demiurge, you know, rather than by God, because, you know, God would never create something as horrific as this world, so to speak. And I think that's a dangerous path to follow.
Right, you're right. It can lead to you know, trying to escape from conditions rather than dealing with them. Right. Coping with them, finding ways to adapt to and harmonize with the universe as it is another way of looking at it. That's where that word practical comes in, you know, because we know that you know, the unity teachings are about a lot of it's about just dealing with everyday sort of experiences that we have. Can we use our mind and spirituality to heal our bodies? How do we apply our minds in ways that make us more prosperous, make us happier, give us better relationships? That's the practical dimension that emerges from how you're looking at the universe. If you just try to escape from it, then you're not really dealing with it. You're just sort of, you know, hiding out. You're becoming a sort of, in effect, a kind of hermit, right?
Right.
Enter Donald Trump, again, Peale's perhaps most famous acolyte. From childhood, he absorbed the message of optimism, self-belief, and positive thinking. This idea that these things, positive thinking could shape reality itself. Through his father, Fred, and through Marble Collegiate Church, that was Peale's church, and through the booming culture of self-help that Peale helped popularize. By repeatedly equating commercial acumen with piety, and equating uncertainty with religious doubt, connecting personal and cultural failure with collectivism and godlessness, these hallmarks of communism, or at least anti-communist view of communism. Peale had admirers that decades earlier had helped redefine religious Americans as the socially superior winners, the better people, as Peale once put it. This sounds a bit divisive. By 1957, anything resembling a low opinion of oneself had come to seem like an affront to God. And Peale spotlighted the normally hidden underside of positive psychology. He said, "Never entertain a failure thought, and admonishing those prone to such thinking, you're disintegrating, you're deteriorating, you're dying on the vine." So Trump, again, after decades of attending Peale's services and reading his writings, cited Peale amongst as one of his strongest influences. Marble Collegiate Church has since distanced itself from the President of the United States, largely because of his excesses and radical white nationalist rhetoric. Again, divisiveness. Yet Peale's imprint persists in Trump's linking of optimism, renewal, and Christian nationalism. One consequence of Peale's influence is the continued expansion of the idea that health and wealth are intertwined with religious salvation. Another is the implication that failure or disappointment is the result of insufficient faith, not just in oneself, but in God and the nation. Again, just as Peale warned in the 1950s, Trump declared in January 2016, Christianity is under siege, and he pledged to protect the religion as president. White evangelicals supported Trump by an 81 to 16% margin. Mainline Protestants favored him 58 to 39. Trump extends Peale's message to the national stage with all its problematic anti-communistic elements. Alliance and triumph are blessed. This is hearkening back to this idea of the divine right of kings. Religion is the path to personal and national redemption. The unbelieving, indifferently religious are largely absent from this vision. In a speech at the Union League in Philadelphia, Trump said, "We will be one nation under one God, saluting one flag." Again, this is a divisive, essentialist view of Christian nationalism. Donald Trump is in essence a self-help apostle, and he's always sought to create his own reality by asserting it into being, even when that assertion appears as bullying. But where many see failure, he sees only success and declares it loudly, repeatedly, and without pause. He's claimed, we have the votes to pass a new health care bill despite lacking the numbers. We get an A+ for his administration's hurricane response, contrary to public assessment. And I've had about the most legislation passed of any president in a 9-month period that's ever served, a statement contradicted by objective metrics, but consistent with his lifelong insistence on framing reality in his terms and his self-image. So the truth is that Trump's legislative agenda now has stalled. His approval ratings are historically low. The war in Iran is low, is unpopular. The war in Ukraine is at a stalemate. The Israel situation is highly unpopular. Trump's connections to Epstein, the release of the Epstein files, has caused Trump to be immensely unpopular, even within his own base. Even folks like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene have gone against the president. Because of this, I just watched Steve Bannon's, the Errol Morris documentary with Steve Bannon. And Steve Bannon says, we ran on three things: immigration, bringing manufacturing back to the United States, and ending the wars. All three of those things in that agenda. You know, I have mixed feelings about immigration. On the one hand, it is illegal labor is labor trafficking. But they're not going over after ConAgra and these big corporations that are undercutting American workers by hiring workers for less than our laws say that you should be allowed to hire somebody for. So that is a real, there is an issue there in terms of bread and butter economics. However, this racist, xenophobic, violent fascist, killing of American citizens, not to mention killing of immigrants. So Trump. Okay, so the immigration, but despite all that, even if you take Trump at his word and his administration at their word, they have done less deportations than Obama, the deporter-in-chief, and even in the second term, less than Biden deported. Okay, immigration groups called Obama the deporter-in-chief. Let's not forget that. So that has not been effective. Bringing manufacturing back has not been effective. This tariff agenda has stalled. The Supreme Court has called the tariffs unconstitutional. He's going to have to sort of go back to the drawing board and rethink all of this. It's been done so roughshod and so disastrously that one might wonder if this is sort of tarring and feathering the whole idea of tariffs at all and of protectionist economics at all. And then ending the wars, well, clearly the Iran situation right now, the Venezuela situation. He's not ending any wars. He's getting us involved in even more wars. But still, despite this, his proclamations of positivity continue unabated. He says we're doing great. The economy is great. Yeah, there's this war thing, but we're actually ending wars at the same time that we're starting them. So again, for Trump, these aren't questions of right or wrong or true or false. They're acts of faith. They reflect his vision of a devout belief. Again, not in a traditional Presbyterian sense of his mother's Scottish upbringing, but in Peale's uniquely American vision, the belief in self above all else. The conviction that thought is causative, this is a new thought foundation, and that persistent assertion can translate into tangible achievement. And again, as I mentioned, Trump and his father were Pearl acolytes. The minister, Peale, actually officiated at the first of Trump's weddings. And again, Peale's philosophy has served as a lodestar for him through the decades of triumphs and crises. Peale urged, stamp indelibly on your mind a mental picture of yourself succeeding. Hold this picture tenaciously, never permit it to fade. For a young builder determined to reshape the skyline of one of the world's greatest cities, this mindset seemed perfectly tailored. It allowed Trump to survive controversies, bankruptcies, setbacks that might have crushed a less dogged personality. And it also ultimately helped him achieve the highly improbable, winning a presidential election that most polls predicted he could not. So, in this sense, he's arguably the most successful Peale disciple ever. I don't ever think it's an argument, Trump biographer Gwenda Blair recently noted. It's a fact. The power of positive thinking, he weaponized it. In the political arena, where spin is scrutinized, reality has measurable consequences, Trump's relentless optimism carries both promise and peril. It's so optimistic that it's delusional at times. And he doesn't really seem to have a long-term goal for a lot of this stuff. It's an asset in one hand. It's a demonstration of his grit and conviction, but it's also a form of self-delusion where potentially high-stakes consequences on a national and global stage might put a large amount of people in peril, even death. With the war situation, certainly there's much death, much blood to be spilled. But either way, Peale's teachings remain embedded in the way that the former celebrity, reality game show host, businessman, developer, real estate mogul conceives of power and success and indeed the nature of reality itself. So we in New Thought have something in common with Trump in terms of how we see the power of thought and the power of positivity. Peale emphasized obstacles are not allowed to destroy your happiness. Self-confidence leads to self-realization, and belief in oneself is essential to manifesting God's abundance. Critics called Peale simplistic, God's salesman, some said. But millions, including the Trump family, were captivated by him. And Trump internalized this lesson. Think it, say it, and make it real. So Trump's career from being a real estate mogul to becoming president exemplifies this mindset. Even in personal, financial, or political crises, Trump doubled down on the principles of the power of positive thinking. From near bankruptcy in the 1990s to his improbable political victories, Trump has consistently visualized success and asserted it publicly. Of course, inheriting a lot of money.
He played Monopoly. Yes, indeed. He played with his brother.
Yeah.
He played with Robert. But more than Monopoly, he played with building blocks.
Ooh.
Always with building blocks.
Another question viewers wanted to know was, as a grown man now, how often did Donald Trump come visit his parents?
He comes very often.
I'd say once a week. Would
Just
you
about
say that?
at
Yes.
least once a week he comes. He comes for dinner. He likes his mother's
Error, then, is not something which occurs out here on this screen on which I am projecting my consciousness. An error takes place in my process of assigning a value to the experience, deciding whether it's good or bad. And I will suffer in direct proportion to my decision or my judgment that it's bad. I will progress and continue to find expanding degrees of soul freedom and mind freedom if I have decided this is the work of God, and I expect to be shown how it is good.
But let us be sure that we believe, just as we believe our food will digest, just as we know the sun's going to rise in the morning, just as we know that the world is still round, just as we know that you and I do not know how it is we can eat ham sandwiches, drink milk, tea or coffee, and have it turn into flesh, bone and sinew and blood and marrow. Everywhere we look, we are watching the mystery of life, the riddle of life. Someone has said, and I think rightly, that the riddle of life is understood only by him who knows that God is good, who makes a ladder of his faith and climbs from sense to soul, finds no line between mere human goodness and divine, but judging God by what in man is best, with a child's trust, leans on a father's breast. It isn't so hard to believe. We just haven't taught how easy it is to believe. And you know, if we just take it that way, and we'll say, yes, the world is round, I am held in place by some power, and now I'm going to believe in another kind of a power. It actually exists, and I'm going to try it. And then when we stop to analyze what is belief, what is faith, it's very simple. This is one of the great hurdles, however. People say, well, I just haven't got that kind of faith, merely because they think you're talking about something that's impossible. We're only talking about that which is completely possible, which is completely simple and direct, and something which you, in the secret place of your own mind, sitting there alone, you know it as well as I do. We all believe. We just haven't quite thought practicing our belief until something really happens. And then we have learned that while something in us rises and says no, the belief isn't complete, and what do we do then? We just reaffirm that belief.
I am present. I am here, O God, and I am the instrument of those sevenfold rays and archangels.
We are your instrument of those sevenfold rays and all your archangels, all of them.
And I will not retreat. I will take my stand. I will not fear to speak, and I will be the instrument of God's will, whatever it is.
We will not retreat. We will not retreat. We will stand our ground. We will not fear to speak. We will be the instrument of your will, whatever it is.
Here I am, so help me God, in the name of Archangel Michael and his legions. I am freeborn, and I shall remain freeborn, and I shall not be enslaved by any foe within or without.
In your name, and the name of your legions, we are freeborn, and we shall remain freeborn, and we shall not be enslaved by any foe, within or without. So help me God. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you very much.
Okay, but there is a crucial distinction that we need to make here. Not all positive thinking is the same, and scholars and unity teachers such as Wallace D. Wattles, Eric Butterworth, and Mark Hicks of the Fillmore faith have warned against what Hicks refers to as godless metaphysics. It's a version of New Thought that divorces optimism and success from the higher moral order. Godless metaphysics equates personal gain with spiritual validation. It elevates competition over kindness and compassion. And it substitutes might makes right for justice. It promotes the idea that one may decree a thing and have it come to pass. and that morality is whatever one imagines it to be. It's a mindset that, when applied without ethical grounding, can become a pocket guide for fascists who see success as the triumph of the will, as that Nazi propaganda film is entitled. As Wallace D. Wattles wrote in The Law of Opulence from 1905, some who adopt New Thought only partially, using affirmations and positive thinking for competitive advantage, fall into this godless metaphysics. Here's what Wattles says in The Law of Opulence. Many people who have a partial grasp of the New Thought still suppose that it's necessary that some should be poor in order that others may have enough, and believe that wealth is only possible to those who have superior ability or the power to attract to themselves a larger portion of the limited supply. These people try to apply the New Thought principles on the competitive plane, and they do so with a fair degree of success. This accounts for Trump's success. They try to develop a superior attracting power. They inject new motives and new energy into competitive business methods. They assert, "I am success," all while believing that they can succeed only because 95% of all others fail. The majority of these competitive New Thought people do achieve a great measure of success because their faith gives them just the energy, push, and optimism which are necessary in competitive business. The confidence born of their belief makes a majority of their actions successful. Their partial application of New Thought ideas makes them exceptionally able competitors, and they attribute their success to thought power and to affirmation, when in fact it's almost purely competitive. This so-called New Thought is really the highest and most perfected form of the old thought. It sees Caesar's kingdom after all. It has no conception of the kingdom of God. So by contrast, Christian metaphysics is about aligning with higher moral order. It's a recognition that my own individual good is tied to the good of the whole, of the collective, of the community. That the individual and communal will are not separate, but are linked, entangled. It's a surrender to divine law rather than the supremacy of the individual will. Will is a spiritual power that needs to be spiritualized to align with God, as Fillmore says. It's not self-interest, but it is. It is self-interest because love, justice, and compassion, when they guide our action, is good for the community and is good for us. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. What's good for the gander is good for the goose. True spiritual power involves the transformation of the self and the world in alignment with God's purposes. As it says in Colossians 3, verses 12 through 14, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, mildness, and patience. Clothe yourselves with love, for it is a perfect bond of union. Love is the antidote to despair, and Christian metaphysics is not about asserting oneself over others. It's about overthrowing the dominance of ego and of will and establishing a moral order in both the individual and society. As Andrew Jackson Davis talked about, harmonization of the individual and harmonization of society simultaneously. So even as we examine Trump and Peale, we must remember that our responsibility is to deny despair and affirm love. We must stand against injustice, hatred, and indifference, but not in a way that's naively optimistic and not in a way that is divisive and angry. Yes, it's okay to be angry, when the world is the way it is, but we mustn't allow our judgment to be clouded. We must act with clear discernment and with clear goals in mind. Our faith must be grounded and actionable, rooted in spiritual and moral awareness. This faith calls on us to confront reality, relative reality, while holding fast to goodness, justice, and the higher moral order of divine law. Science confirms that positive thinking can be very powerful, but to a point. Psychologists refer to it as positive illusions or unrealistic optimism. Optimism can help people optimism can help people persevere under uncertainty, and it can motivate action and enhance our performance. It can also sustain our well-being. It can have physical effects on our body, can help us improve our health. But when optimism ignores reality entirely, and again, I'm talking about relative reality, it can lead to poor planning, risky decisions, and self-delusion. For Donald Trump, some psychologists argue that this line has always been blurry. He's always convinced himself and millions of others, his followers, of success even when objective measures suggest otherwise. In the words of Princeton historian Kevin Kruse, what Norman Vincent Peale sold was a certain positive, feel-good religiosity that demands nothing of you and rewards you with worldly riches and success. It's a self-help gospel, the name it and claim it gospel. Well, this feel-good approach promises achievement, wealth, and influence, and it doesn't demand moral restraint or humility. This is an enticing formula for those drawn to certainty and triumph. And Trump's attraction to Peale did not diminish with age. Even as traditional theologians derided Peale as a huckster and intellectuals mocked him as a lightweight, Trump remained a devoted adherent of Peale. In 1977, Peale, nearly 80 years old, officiated Trump's wedding. In 1983, shortly after Trump Tower opened, Trump credited Peale with instilling in him the can-do ethos. The mind can overcome any obstacle, he told the New York Times. I never think of the negative. Peale in turn praised Trump as kindly and courteous, noting a profound streak of honesty and humility in him. Trump internalized Peale's core principle to visualize success and affirm it, and act as if it is already true. In The Art of Deal in 1987, he wrote, "If you're going to be thinking anyway, you might as well think big." Employees witnessed the effects of this firsthand. Jack O'Donnell, a marketing executive at one of Trump's Atlantic City casinos, recalled, "This is the best place in the world to work, and I'm the best guy in the world to work for," Trump told him. "I'm America's most successful businessman. I'm a winner. I've always been a winner." O'Donnell soon saw the dark side of such relentless optimism, though. By 1988, a manic and temperamental Trump was overwhelmed by the empire he had built. Debts, acquisitions, and operational changes piled up. He was at a point where image superseded reality, O'Donnell wrote. In the same way that he believed a man could retain his hair by willing not to go bald, he thought he could make a multi-million-dollar company succeed simply by stating it repeatedly. And hey, it kind of worked. The early 1990s brought near bankruptcy and public humiliation. Yet Trump drew on Peale's teachings, refusing to yield to despair. "It's all going to work out," he said to a Wall Street Journal reporter. "Hotter than ever," he told New York Magazine. Steve Ballenbach, the financial fixer who helped Trump avoid personal bankruptcy, observed, "I would have been looking for the nearest building to jump off of, and he just remained upbeat all the time. I never suspected that he'd lost a moment's sleep." Throughout the decades, the business crises and public controversies, Trump repeatedly leaned on Peale's prescription to affirm, visualize, believe, and persevere. In interviews, he cited Peale's power of positive thinking, stating, "I never lost faith in myself. Being tenacious is part of my personality. Defeat is not in my vocabulary." And again, even amid repeated corporate failures, Trump mortgage, Trump University, stalled condo projects, he publicly proclaimed success. When Trump launched his presidential campaign, the Peale methodology was evident. Despite polls, scandals, and public criticism, he persisted, repeatedly asserting victory. "We're going to win the great state of Michigan," he declared at a 1 a.m. rally on Election Day, "and we're going to win back the White House." Well, he didn't end up winning the second time, but he did the third time he ran. So Trump's life demonstrates both the allure and the danger of extreme positive thinking. From a scientific perspective, he's an unparalleled experiment. Optimism can motivate action and improve resilience. Studies show this, particularly under uncertainty. Psychologists Jonathan Brown and Julie Norman emphasize that believing in one's capacity to succeed can confer measurable benefits, as I said, including enhanced perseverance, better performance, and improved social perception. But excessive optimism has limits when it becomes a shield against reality. It can warp judgment and produce dysfunctional behavior. Again, as Norm writes, the biggest problem with the Norman Vincent Peale version of positive thinking is that you can't know when you've crossed the line. Anything negative that impinges on it is evil, bad, and forbidden. So Trump's repeatedly, again, turned to self-assured assertions into tangible achievements, convincing others to accept his narrative even when it conflicts with measurable reality. But science is cautioned that such success may be temporary or contingent. As Peter Werner observes, reality is like gravity. It exerts its own force. So positive thinking can propel a person far, but it can't indefinitely override objective facts, relative reality. So what can we take from this? Even as we examine the misapplications of positive thinking in figures like Donald Trump, we must remember our responsibility. Harness optimism to face challenges, but do so with love, integrity, and justice. Deny despair, but never deny reality. Focus on people, not things. Focus on compassion, not competition. The story of Peale and Trump illustrates both the power and the limits of ego-centered optimism. Peale offered a feel-good religiosity that promised worldly success if you simply believed and asserted yourself. Trump, long shaped by this teaching, became a living demonstration of it. A self-styled reality builder, persistent, tenacious, and often in defiance of measurable reality. Science confirms that optimism can sustain performance and well-being, but unchecked, divorced from discernment and ethical alignment, it risks delusion, risky decisions, and harm to others. But like it or not, mind metaphysics and new thought have historically been the spiritual expression of the working class. They articulate a yearning for self-determination, a hope in the face of material hardship, and the possibility of a better world. Perhaps this explains Trump's popularity in parts of the country. A distrust of experts, of abstract elites, and a materialist system that often seems rigged. To reject New Thought outright, then, is to close off the spiritual language through which many working class people express hope and imaginatively encounter possibilities beyond the constraints of their present circumstances. In other words, to deny mind metaphysics is, in a way, to deny the working class a vision of another world, a vision of what might be possible. As Mitch Horowitz reminds us, mind metaphysics are for the people, and they work. They're not tricks to escape the world. They're tools for the sensitive, mature individual to navigate life with clarity and purpose. As Horowitz cites an old proverb, a hungry person needs not a statement on food, but food. In other words, spiritual practice gives you something to act on immediately. Food is transmission. Affirmative thinking, alignment with divine will, and compassionate action are food for the soul. They're not guarantees of unchallenged success, but they are a reliable path to meaningful, effective engagement with reality. This aligns with the teaching of St. Paul, the Fillmores, Martin Luther King Jr., and contemporary voices like Marianne Williamson. When Williamson addressed fear directly in the 2019 Democratic debate, she articulated a profound spiritual truth, saying, "Mr. President, if you're listening," was he president? If you're listening, I think this is the 2016 debate, actually. Mr. Trump, if you're listening, you have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. I'm going to harness love for political purposes, and sir, love will win. Dr. King's radical revolution of values called for society to shift from valuing things to valuing people. True metaphysical optimism does not bypass reality, but works with it, guided by the whole, the spirit, and moral law. Reality, as Michael Topper and others emphasize, is not solipsistic. We do not live in a vacuum where our thoughts alone shape the world. Every act, every affirmation, every intention occurs within a wider web of consequences. Unseen influences and the moral and spiritual fabric of the whole are entangled with our individual will. Attempts to impose a purely ego-centered creation of your own reality approach fails because it ignores the surrounding context, the coexisting patterns of being, and the ethical dimensions inherent in our choices. Authentic optimism is thus always relational and grounded. It is the willingness to affirm positive outcomes while remaining responsive to relative reality, aware of repercussions, and guided by ethical principles. It's the courage to act in faith while recognizing that the world and other people are not just extensions of our will. The results of our actions, both visible and hidden, are intertwined with the totality of being. And the impossible can only manifest when our personal will is harmonized with divine will. There is nothing supernatural, only natural. So this is the deeper lesson of history, of the Fillmores, of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and of the spiritual masters. The power of love, alignment, and conscience is real. But it's not a license for fantasy or unbounded ego. It's a call to courageous action, to clear-eyed optimism, and moral responsibility. So as we leave this reflection, remember, release fear, but anchor faith in reality.
Right now, by faith, that is what Myrtle Fillmore calls the logic of spirit. She says we must learn to trust the logic of spirit. Right now, by the logic of spirit, I say, this is good. But in my conscious mind, I do not at this moment know what good it is. But I call upon the divine intelligence to show me, because I do not intend to stay as ignorant tomorrow as I am today. I have every intention of growing the same way Jesus did. Luke 2:42, and he grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. All right. In this mathematical model, the first or left-hand model gives a correct or assigns a correct value to the parts of the problem. 2 plus 2 equals 4. In this we are combining or relating things and seeing the actual result of the relationship. We're seeing the truth when we see that 4 is the actual result of combining 2 and 2. Everyone can use the principle of addition. Everyone can use the universal concept of two-ness. And no matter how many people use it, it's still just as available as it always was. And the principle is totally unmoved by any misuse we make of it. It is totally undisturbed by any lies we tell about it. And that's the reason that we can say, as the prophet Haggai says in the Old Testament, "Thou, O Lord, art of purer eyes than to behold iniquity." God, as universal principle, doesn't see and doesn't feel and isn't disturbed by my misuse or misunderstanding of the principle. Now, Emily Cady points out that this can leave us with a great feeling of coldness about God. She says we might feel as Mary felt when she went into Joseph's garden. Jesus had been buried there. She went and he wasn't there. She said, "Where have they laid my Lord, the God, the divine man that I could touch with my hands and hear with my ears? Where'd they put him? Where is the divine which can embrace me and hold me when I feel my littleness and my humanness, when I feel broken by the weight of my own mistakes?" That God is real too, and it's not another God. But we usually see the two aspects of the universal principle and the personalness of God. We usually see them at different times. Just as we can look at a so-called optical illusion one way and see like it's a bunch of boxes turned inside that way, and we look at it another way, and there's a bunch of stair steps going down the other way, but we do not find it possible with our limited perception to see it both ways simultaneously, but both are true. We're no more limited than men who are working in the field of the physical sciences, and they're trying to work with the mystery and the meaning of physical light. It has to be seen and computed as a wave phenomena in order to solve certain kinds of problems. It has to be seen as a quantum phenomena in order to solve or deal with certain other kinds of problems. And so it is true, as Ernest Wilson has so engagingly said, we have a very personal God. The kind that, as one of my teachers said, that when we need to, we can just crawl up in God's lap and wrap a big, fluffy pink blanket around us and just lie there and let the Father love us. That is the relatedness by which there is evoked in us the strength of the love faculty. But our awareness and our harmony with God as principle is the awareness that evokes the activity of the wisdom faculty. And as you know, it's much easier to walk with 2 legs than with 1. It's much easier, much more rapid to progress spiritually as we activate both the love faculty and the wisdom faculty.
Williamson, this is a question for you. We've been excuse me, I'm addressing the question, Ms. Williamson. We've been talking a lot about access to health insurance, but for many Americans, their most pressing concern is the high cost of health care. How would you lower the cost of prescription drugs?
Well, first of all, the government should never have made the deal with the big pharma that they couldn't negotiate. That was just part of the regular corruption by which multinational corporations have their way with us. You know, I want to say that while I agree with, I'm with Senator Bennett and others, but I agree with almost everything here. I'll tell you one thing. It's really nice that we've got all these plans, but if you think we're going to beat Donald Trump by just having all these plans, you got another thing coming. Because he didn't win by saying he had a plan. He won by simply saying, make America great again. We've got to get deeper than just these superficial fixes, as important as they are. Even if we're just talking about the superficial fixes, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a health care system in the United States. We have a sickness care system in the United States. We just wait till somebody gets sick, and then we talk about who's going to pay for the treatment and how they're going to be treated. What we need to talk about is why so many Americans have unnecessary chronic illnesses, so many more compared to other countries. And that gets back into not just the big pharma, not just health insurance companies. It has to do with chemical policies. It has to do with environmental policies. It has to do with food policies. It has to do with drug policies.
Thank you.
It has to do with environmental
Senator
policies.
Bennett, a question.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes, what Donald Trump has done to these children, and it's not just in Colorado, Governor, you're right, it is kidnapping, and it's extremely important for us to realize that. If you forcibly take a child from their parents' arms, you are kidnapping them. And if you take a lot of children and you put them in a detainment center, thus inflicting chronic trauma upon them, that's called child abuse. This is collective child abuse. And when this is crime, both of those things are a crime. And if your government does it, that doesn't make it less of a crime. These are state-sponsored crimes.
Congressman.
And what President Trump has done is not only attack these children, not only demonize these immigrants, he is attacking a basic principle of America's moral core. We open our hearts to the stranger. This is extremely important. And it's also important for all of us to remember, and I have great respect for everyone who is on this stage, but we're going to talk about what to do about health care. Well, where have you been, guys? Because if it's not just a matter of a plan, and I haven't heard anybody on this stage who has talked about American foreign policy in Latin America and how we might have, in the last few decades, contributed to something being more.
Senator Gillibrand.
All of these issues are extremely important, but they are specifics. They are symptoms. And the underlying cause has to do with deep, deep, deep realms of racial injustice, both in our criminal justice system and in our economic system. And the Democratic Party should be on the side of reparations for slavery for this very reason. I do not believe that the average American is a racist, but the average American is woefully undereducated about the history of race in the United States.
Ms. Williamson, hold one moment.
Just trust us on
The fact
this.
that somebody
We're
has
gonna-
a younger body doesn't mean you don't have old ideas.
No, we need new
John
ideas.
Kennedy John Kennedy did not say, I have a plan to get a man to the moon, and so we're going to do it, and I think we can all work together, and maybe we can get a man on the moon. And John Kennedy said, by the end of this decade, we are going to put a man on the moon. Because John Kennedy was back in the day when politics included the people, and included imagination, and included great dreams, and included great plans. And I have had a career not making the political plans, but I have had a career harnessing the inspiration and the motivation and the excitement of people, masses of people. When we know that when we say we are going to turn from a dirty economy to a clean economy, we're going to have a Green New Deal, we're going to create millions of jobs, we're going to do this within the next 12 years, because I'm not interested in just winning the next election. We are interested in our grandchildren.
All right, we're going to sneak in a break, and I'm going to go down the line here, and I'm asking you, please, for 1 or 2 words only. All right? Please.
Really?
President Obama in his first year wanted to address both health care and climate. And he could only get one signature issue accomplished. It was, obviously, health care. He didn't get to do climate change. You may only get one shot, and your first issue that you're going to push, you get one shot that it may be the only thing you get passed. What is that first issue for your presidency? And Ms. Williamson,
My first call is to Prime Minister of New Zealand, who said that her goal is to make New Zealand the place where it's the best place in the world for a child to grow up. And I will tell her girlfriend you are so on, because the United States of America is going to be the best place in the world for a child to grow up.
And this is what this question is, which is you're going to have to you're likely going to have to reset a relationship between America and another country or entity if you become president perhaps because of some relationship that you just mentioned about President Trump. What is the first relationship you like to reset as president? I'll go down the line, and I'll start with Ms. Williamson.
Well, one of my first phone calls would be to call the European leaders and say, we're back, because I totally understand how important it is that the United States be part of the Western Alliance.
I'm trying to get one or 2 words here.
45 seconds for your closing
I'm sorry we haven't talked more tonight about how we're going to beat Donald Trump. I have an idea about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not going to be beaten just by insider politics talk. He's not going to be beaten just by somebody who has plans. He's going to be beaten by somebody who has an idea what this man has done. This man has reached into the psyche of the American people, and he has harnessed fear for political purposes. So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So sir, I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes. I will meet you on that field. And, sir, love will win.
What we want to do is create large groups of experts in consciousness to practice techniques of consciousness, including yogic flying, which everyone in Canada has heard about and which is the most powerful technique of consciousness. A large group like that creates such an influence of positivity and harmony in the field of collective consciousness that it just dissolves all of the stresses which cause the problems and prevent all of the conventional approaches that the other parties use from actually working. And in fact, this field effect of consciousness is the most solidly validated phenomenon in the history of social science. So it works. And it really is time for us to apply this knowledge to solve the problems of the country.
We will appoint ministers based on their qualifications, irrespective of their party affiliation. We will establish a new atmosphere of harmony, cordiality, and respect in the political arena. We will create an all-party government and conflict-free politics. I think every Canadian will agree with me that the best government is nature's government. Only with the support of natural law can we sustain growth and prosperity for all Canadians. Only the Natural Law Party can create a flourishing economy in which there is employment and opportunities for everyone.
This
election, you've heard a lot about yogic flying and the experience of bubbling bliss. That's because 7,000 yogic flyers could create a perfect government with the ability to satisfy everyone. All of our national problems are basically caused by stress. And the best antidote is transcendental meditation and 7,000 yogic flyers, which can eliminate stress in the whole country, create an integrated national consciousness, and prevent problems. For a perfect government, both the natural law...
Good news!
And when the city is dealing with someone...
Good news broadcast. I bring you good news. Not rumor, not fear, not the tired repetition of the world's anxieties, but good news that lifts the mind and reminds us of the hidden greatness within humanity. Somewhere in a quiet museum in Blois, a page-long thought lost has been found. Yes, lost for nearly a century, hidden, overlooked, waiting. And not just any page. A page from the work of Archimedes, one of the greatest minds to ever walk this earth. A man who, long before our modern age, touched the infinite through number, through form, through the quiet language of truth. This page, written over 1,000 years ago, was buried beneath layers of time. Covered first by prayer, then by paint, even an image of the prophet Daniel laid over it, as if history itself had sealed the wisdom away. But listen carefully, because here is the good news. Truth cannot be erased. Wisdom cannot be destroyed. What is real waits
That's
pause.
our report for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll all be black next. We'll all be back next week, and I'll be black. We'll all be back, though. It's not my night.
Good news!
God is my help in every need. God does my every hunger feed. God walks beside me, guides my way through every moment of the day. I now am wise, I now am true, patient, kind, and loving too. All things I am, can do, and be through Christ the truth that is in me. God is my health, I can't be sick. God is my strength unsailing quick. God is my all, I know no fear, since God and love and truth are here. Amen.
This week's meditation is Effective Meditations for Stress Relief by Effective Learning Systems Incorporated from 1995.
Mind scrubbing out all the folds and corners. Clear it and cleanse it of all negativity. When you close your eyes, let yourself feel as though you are also closing out all cares, all distractions, all negativity. For now, you shut them out of your consciousness. It is time for peaceful, rewarding, mindful meditation. Create positive feelings inside yourself as you watch this mist caress and care for you. It's as if the greatest, most powerful and loving being in the universe was touching you deeply with positive, loving, healing energy. fully alive, aware, and stress-free.
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And leave us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.